Okay, man. Okay, so let's go, and then I'll cut it in editing, but let's start.
Okay.
Hello, everybody. This is Olivier Melnick, today through Jewish Eyes, and I decided to do another program with my good friend John Holler, and I don't think I've had you. Have I ever had you in my program? I don't think so.
I don't think you have.
Yes, we did a few things together. Recently, we did something in Texas at my church, a prophecy conference.
Right. And you'll be at Fellowship Bible Chapel here in Sunbury, Ohio, in April 20th, somewhere around there.
I was hoping you remember the date, because I was going to look it up and I did not. So yes, it's April something.
It's a couple weeks after the Christian holiday called Easter.
Right. And I'll be there. I'll be speaking at the church. And again, the church name is
Fellowship Bible Chapel.
And this is also where you do your prophecy updates from that church.
Prophecy updates from there, yeah.
Okay.
And so you'll do the sermon first hour, and then you and I will do a discussion like this second hour.
And how can people find you? Your updates they're online on YouTube. Where are they?
YouTube under Fellowship Bible Chapel, also on Rumble under Real FBC. Fellowship Bible Chapel also has an app, and there might be some other places you can find it, but I think we do it on Vimeo. We sort of use Vimeo as a backup.
Okay.
And I should warn people that at least recently, you go to Fellowship Bible Chapel to see a video, and YouTube is putting a sign on there. This video might be inappropriate. For example, you were on Allison Steinberg's In Focus show the other day, and I was on the next day. So I recorded that and put it on the YouTube channel, and now people are going to look at it, and it has this video might be inappropriate. And I don't know if it's because I had a video of some of the things going on in Gaza playing in the background or not, but I think last Sunday I got tagged with those videos as well, and I didn't use any videos that would be considered violent or inappropriate.
Listen, if being told that the video might be inappropriate is a lot better than being put in YouTube prison and for something you said. So I mean, I as long as we can publish the videos and let people decide if they want to watch them or not, I'm okay with that.
Right.
Yeah.
So look, it's kind of hard when you're talking about a war to maybe not get some images that I mean, they're all over YouTube, they're all over Facebook, they're all over Twitter, and including some are pretty bad. Telegram's even worse, with some of the Hamas and pro-Palestinian terrorism channels are putting up just absolutely horrific things about what's been going on in southern Israel.
Right. So John, again, thank you for being with me today. It's been a week, okay? Last Saturday, I woke up early morning, and I was like 90% packed with my suitcase, ready to take a tour of 46 people to Israel. And I was flying out of JFK the next evening, Sunday evening. And I've been to Israel many times, so have you. And my first reaction early morning on Saturday was, this too shall pass. It's just a terrorist attack. They're used to it over there. They're going to just nip it in the bud, and we're going to move forward. And pretty much within 2 or 3 hours, I realized, okay, this is not going to pass. This is not just a small one and done, lone wolf terrorist attack. This was something a lot bigger. So we ended up canceling the tour, which, of course, I think it was the right thing to do, and for the safety of the travelers. So here we are. It's been a week now, and you know me, John. I've been working for what now, 22, 23 years on educating the church at large on anti-Semitism and how to fight it and how to use it even in reaching out the Jewish community. Understanding to explain, who true Christians are, and my stomach is still upside down. I mean, I'm disgusted with what I'm seeing, and we know now that this was the the largest attack in the largest the biggest casualty since the Holocaust.
Right. It's been horrific. I myself, I woke up to get a drink of water or something at 12:58 a.m. last Saturday morning. And I looked at my phone, which I'm prone to do whenever I wake up. And it was to say that it was blowing up is an understatement. The terrorist infiltration appears to have started a little bit before 6 a.m.
Yeah.
in Israel, and then the rocket fires started out of Gaza at about 6:30 a.m. Don't know exactly how many terrorists made it across the border fence, but it appears to have been somewhere close to 2,000. The latest reports
I heard 1,500, but yeah, maybe it's
well, they have killed 1,500.
Okay.
They still have a few that are running loose, so maybe it was only 1,503 or 1,508. But this is, as you said, this is the worst terrorist attack in Israel history. There's well above 3,000 people injured, some still critical with life-threatening injuries, and somewhere north of 1,300 Israeli citizens inside Israel killed. So they killed 1,500 terrorists inside Israel. And I haven't really seen that much. I haven't seen that reported that often in the statistics that are coming out. Now, Israel has begun, Defense Minister Gallant and Prime Minister Netanyahu said that they were going to end Hamas completely. I took that to mean eradicate it. It's been a long-standing problem. Hamas really came to power in Gaza about 2007.
607, yeah.
In 2005, the Israeli government, I think with pressure from the United States, well, clearly with pressure from the United States government, evacuated about 9,000 Israeli Jews from Gaza. They lived there, they had homes, they had communities, they had farms, they had some very high-tech greenhouses and everything. And so Ariel Sharon, and it was rather disturbing images coming out of there in 2005 as these people were literally ripped out of their homes and forced to live elsewhere. So then the entire Gaza Strip, which is about, forget how many square miles, it varies in width from about 2 or 3 miles in the north to about 7.5 miles in the south.
Yeah, it's not that big. It's
maybe, I'm going to say maybe 20 miles from north to south.
It's 25 miles long and 7 miles wide.
Okay. Yeah, although it narrows down once you get a little further north. Now, I was invited to the Christian Media Summit by the Israeli government last December. And one of the things we did, this was very educational for me because, we think of these places, we hear about them on the news, but we don't really have a good concept of what they are. So they took us down. The first thing we did was went to an Army Israeli Air Defense Force base near there where they have built a mock-up of Gaza City. It's called the Urban Warfare Training Center. It's probably unique among training centers like this in the world. A lot of countries send their people there to be trained about urban warfare, close-in fighting. We're going, what they will be finding when they go into Gaza City and elsewhere in the Gaza Strip over the next, what appears to be maybe within the next 24 hours. We're recording this on.
Yeah, it hasn't started.
Right, but they've already sent some teams in to try to rescue people, some, I'm sure, special forces, but they've been bombing this place. There's been thousands of tons of bombs and munitions dropped. They've been doing the typical knock on the door type thing, knock on the roof. They send a small armament in. They call the people in charge of the building and say, we're going to take down the building. You need to evacuate.
Right. Now, I want to go back to something you just said, if you don't.
Sure.
You just said that, Jewish people in what 2006, 7,
2005.
2005 got,
Actually, it was on the 9th of Av in 2005. I looked it up.
of all dates, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the Jewish date when the temple was destroyed, apparently
Right.
twice actually. But which is a very somber date on the Jewish calendar. Now, you said that, and I'm thinking, okay, let me try to do a quick picture for our audience here. This is a strip of land which belongs to Israel, which is part of Eretz Israel, that the Israeli government gave up completely. There's no Jewish authority in the Gaza Strip. Oh, I mean, as of last week, okay, things are going to change very quickly, but there's no control of the Gaza Strip. So the Palestinian Authority, Hamas, is doing what they want there. It's their own land for now. And they are coming out of Gaza into Israel to kill civilians, accusing Israel of occupation. But there's no occupation in Gaza.
No, I mean, Israel does, have a border with it. They've erected a border fence that they monitor. They do control who goes in and out, but there's also a border crossing at Rafah in the south, which is Egypt. Yeah. And in fact, when Israel sort of started to come into being back in the 1948, the Gaza Strip was actually part of Egypt. And at some point, Israel took that over. I guess maybe it was after the 67 war. It might have been after 48, but somehow Israel got in control of it. I don't really remember that exactly, but it's long been a haven for extremism, terrorism, base for launching of attacks. And so in 2000, it was in the charge of the Palestinian Authority. And then after the Jewish residents of Gaza were forced out, I mean, literally taken out by the Israeli Defense Force, ripped out of their homes. I remember the images are very disturbing. That was under Prime Minister Ariel Sharon, with the complete backing and I think pressure from the George Bush 43 administration here in the United States. It's very interesting on the timing of this too. We both know Bill Koenig, who's written a very good book about the principle in the Bible about I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you.
Yes.
His most recent one is called Eye to Eye, Facing the Consequences of Dividing Israel. And he goes through and he documents when the U.S. force, at least because we're here in the U.S., I think you could do this with other countries as well, though. When we force Israel to give up the land and divide the land, we have a lot of difficulties. So I remember I had a very interesting discussion at the airport with the brother of Itamar Marcus. Itamar runs a thing called Palestinian Media Watch, where he looks at Palestinian media, TV, audio, and translates it. And like some other organizations, they
kind of like Memory.
Exactly. But it's focused mainly on Palestine, where Memory is the Middle East Media Research Institute. Right. And by the way, you should go to palwatch. I think it's palwatch.org and Memory, MEMRI.org.
Those are two excellent sites. I'll put them in the description. I go there all the time. They are solid. They do their research, and they're such an eye opener to the what's really going on in the Middle East. People speaking from both sides of their mouth. Because what happens is that they're able to go to the source, listen, translate the language, and say exactly what it is, and even pick up on the mannerism and the body language and the outfits, the location, the customs, the culture, a lot more than we would just watch something and go like it would just pass by us and we would have no clue.
And the other thing that Memory and PalWatch do is they will take what is released to Western media by the speakers, and then they will go and see what they're saying on Palestinian and Arab media, and they're often very, very different.
Oh yeah.
So in fact, we have an example of this with memory just this week, and then I'll tell the story about Itamar Marcus's brother when I met him at Ben Gurion Airport just by happenstance. But it was a fantastic 4-hour conversation. But so one of the controversies about the current terror attacks that took place is who funded them, who planned them, who paid for them, and who directed them. Now, the United States government, and I'm not a fan of this particular administration, came out and said, well, Iran had nothing to do. We've not seen anything to indicate that Iran has anything to do with this. I think that's nonsense. Others have reported that there was a meeting of the Hamas representatives, Hezbollah, and an Iranian general from the Iranian Revolutionary Guard in Beirut.
Yeah.
About 2 or 3 weeks ago, and some of the word coming out is that Monday, a week ago Monday, Iranian government gave the green light for Hamas to do this particular operation. In the Iranian newspaper Kayhan, Kayhan, Memory has a very good article up where they reference the article, and the article says, this is written from Iranian perspective, well, we are the hands, feet, and mind of Hamas. So they're building themselves up in their minds. Now, Hamas is
something that the current U.S. administration is still denying.
And I also looked at Kayhan from a day or two later, where the Iranian foreign minister was saying, well, this was all Hamas's glorious operation. We had nothing to do with it. And what you learn is they lie. This is part of Muslim doctrine. They lie out of both sides of their mouth. But back to what happened in 2005, I was at the airport at Ben Gurion, flying home after doing a tour. And I'm standing where our flight gets delayed. And so there's this guy standing me, and we sort of ended up, it was Itamar Marcus's brother. And we started talking about Israel, and we ended up talking about the humor columnist Dave Barry, and Itamar's brother handed me his laptop. I mean, I'm a total stranger. I'm sitting there. I'm sitting there because I'm in pain. It took us like 3.5 hours to get through security. It was before I had my knee replacement operation, so I was in extreme pain.
Oh, so 3.5 hours at Ben Gurion for security. So that was a short one. That was a quick one.
Well, it seemed pretty long. We were there in 2017, and we literally went through security in probably 15 minutes.
Well, those were the years.
Well, it's the Lord's favor on the blessed, I guess. So,
So he passes the laptop.
Passes his laptop to me, and then we started talking, and then we started talking about this dividing the land thing and the right to the land. And this conversation, he was on the same flight I was on, so we're delayed 4 hours, and he stood there and talked to me the entire time. He never left, and he said, you people, you Christians, it became clear I was Christian, he's Orthodox Jewish. And he said, you Christians need to understand that when you force us to divide the land, God sends judgment on you. And he used the example of the evacuation of Gaza in August of 2005. And he said, it was within 48 hours that a little hurricane named Katrina hit the southern United States in New Orleans. And I don't think it was a mistake. In fact, he said, listen, I've analyzed this, and the proportion of land that we were relative to the size of Israel that we forced Jews to evacuate is the same amount of land that was damaged and rendered had to be evacuated in Katrina. Wow. He said it was directly proportionate, and you Christians, you need to tell people that this is what happens. And as Bill has cited, there's many examples.
Oh yeah, his book is he's done an update on the book. Actually, I've got both versions. It's when I first got Bill's book years ago, I thought this is one of those weirdo books that I didn't know Bill very well. And I thought, like, oh, come on. And I started looking at the book, and since then we've become very good friends, very compelling
Yeah.
and hard to put down and hard to argue with.
And you can go to his website. He tracks news very well, watch.org. And he has, if you subscribe, I think it's a fairly modest subscription amount. Uh, uh, and he does a weekly news update or newsletter.
Well,
It's about 10 or 12 pages.
he texts my articles every week, so
Oh, does he really? Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's been a very good supporter of my ministry. Every time I publish an article, he texts them. He's been for like close to 10 years now. Yeah.
I wrote one article, I think, for him on Erdogan in Turkey a number of years ago. I can't find it, but it was a pretty good one. If I could.
Bill is one of my neighbors. He's like, he doesn't live too far from me. So
oh, that's right. He's moved down to Texas now.
He's moved down to Texas, and of course, we're about an hour away from each other, and we've seen each other once.
Yeah, well, I've been down to Texas. I hope to see him, but he was gone that weekend, and we keep missing each other in different places. But I mean, he and his wife Claudia, who passed away a couple of years ago, he's since remarried. I've not met his new wife yet, but he and Claudia spent. They actually came here and spent an entire weekend with us for Thanksgiving, and then when I was in DC, I would always call him up, and I'd head over to his house for dinner.
He's a good brother. He does something that nobody else is doing, and that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to, all of us bring something to the table that's a little different. I want to move on some of those questions because we only have about an hour. But I've been watching a lot of the news, and I hear this phrase over and over, and I'm not sure I really like. You can look at it two different ways. The world is watching. The world is watching, and I'm thinking, they mean the world is watching, like the world is watching and is going to react and is going to come to the support of Israel. And I'm thinking, that's not really what I'm seeing, though. I'm almost thinking the world is watching as a bystander, which bothers me because my people have been victims of the bystanders of the 30s and the 40s.
This has been a very difficult thing to watch. I have been in touch with many friends in Israel. Some of them are very optimistic. They liked what President Biden had to say and Secretary of State Blinken. They like the fact that the Gerald Ford aircraft battle group is off the coast of Israel now. There's been some, I believe, ammunition and weapons transfers from the United States to Israel to help in this effort. And there have been a lot of governments around the world that have expressed support and sympathy for Israel.
Yes,
so far,
that is true.
Like France, where you originated from. Macron has come out, and Germany and others have come out and roundly condemned what Hamas did in southern Israel. And let's just maybe recap that just a little bit. These terrorists were able to pour over the border. They broke through the border in a number of areas. I don't think we still exactly understand everything that happened. It was, at minimum, it was a masterful operation. They had really deceived, I think, the Israeli Defense Force and security guys into a sense of complacency that really the problem, if you remember a year ago, there were a bunch of rockets launched from Gaza into Israel. And Hamas goes, hell, we have nothing to do with that. That's Palestinian Islamic Jihad. That's a completely different group. We're just here. We're just trying to govern this place. And, you've made it difficult for us because you may limit our power and water that we can get. Although they have discovered natural gas off the coast there of Gaza, which helps. But I mean, Israel does control sort of the in and out because of the terror attacks that emanate from there. Right. The border fence, I think, was finally finished in 2021. So when I was there in December, we went down to Nira, which is probably the closest kibbutz to the border fence. It's maybe you go to one part of the kibbutz. It's got a security fence around it, and you look across the field, and maybe a kilometer, a little over half a mile away is the border fence. It's very close, and they've even had a terror tunnel it's a heavily agricultural area down there. A lot of food is grown. and they had a tractor sink into a terror tunnel that was close to the fence. They've been hit with rocket attacks. The lady who talked to us at that session said that living here is, I forget the number, I think she said 95% heaven and 5% hell. When the rocket attack alarm sounds, they have 10 seconds to get to their safe room. We went over to Ashkan, a little further away, for dinner, and they said, well, it's 97% heaven here and 3% hell, because we have 15 seconds to get to
Ashkelon?
Yes. Yeah, it's sort of a collection of community.
Yeah.
And we met the mayor there, who had been injured in a rocket attack at Niram and lost his legs, and terror attack in which 2 men were killed. So they took us to the spot where that had happened and showed us the memorial. But it kind of gives you, and the interesting thing is it's very flat, it's wide open country. You can see, I think I looked up, I did the distance on Google Earth. It's about 13 miles from Niram to Gaza City, which is in the northern part of the Gaza Strip. And you can see the skyscrapers very clearly because it's just flat open country there.
Right.
But they did build a fence. It's to keep them from tunneling under it. It's got concrete barriers down. I think they spent $1 billion on the fence. It's about 35 miles long around Gaza, but somehow they breached it. It was a very masterful operation. But I also think that the people had become complacent because they believe, well, it's really Palestinian Islamic Jihad. Yeah, we get the protests from Hamas, and every so often as the Israeli security forces say, well, we get a little bit out of control, and so the Israeli forces and Air Force comes in and do what they call mowing the lawn in Gaza. We have to, cut it back to
plus you what you get for the last several decades is a terrorist attack here and a one and done there. So Israel is used to those attacks. Unfortunately, they're tragedies at the same level, or not the same level, but they're tragedies. But Israel was maybe getting a little complacent, like you said, because they wouldn't ever expect such a large onslaught of terrorists just like that. They expected 1 or 2 or a day or two stops, and
maybe a dozen.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, and so they were caught off guard.
Yeah, so what they did was, I mean, the fence is heavily monitored. You can hear Steve Finney of Facebook videos or videos on YouTube or Rumble, interviewing people who used to be part of the IDF that was monitoring the fence. And but it appears that what they did was they actually used like drones to drop explosives into communications towers. They took out some communications facilities. And of course, it was a Shabbat, and it was actually one day after the 50th anniversary of the beginning of the Yom Kippur War in 1973, which was a surprise attack. They were complacent then. It was a complete repeat of it, although this day was much more deadly than even the beginning of the Yom Kippur War in 73, which Israel eventually won after a few weeks. And I mean, they took the Sinai, they stopped Ariel Sharon from going all the way to Cairo, and they stopped people from going to Damascus. But initially in that war, Israel was on the verge of defeat. Israel was going to cease to exist, but Richard Nixon, I think, went against the advice of some of his advisors in the government and brought in weapons and stuff to help Israel in its effort, and they succeeded. And they got all of the I mean, they like tripled the size of the country by getting the whole Sinai Peninsula. But and then they kind of reaffirmed their control over the Golan Heights of around Syria. But this one was different. The communications were knocked out. They were blinded. It was a Shabbat. There was also some, as I'm kind of unpacking things, there was a terror attack or something that happened further north that caused them to shift IDF resources up. So what happened was that there weren't enough people. I don't know if it was in Sederot, which is right next to where usually the rockets fall some of these rockets don't go very far. Anyway,
So when you say the north, you mean the north of the Gaza Strip?
north of the Gaza Strip.
Okay,
It's
yeah,
right
because
outside the
people,
Gaza
when you say the
Strip.
north, people are going to think Lebanon border. So you mean Sderot
Yeah.
is northeast of the Gaza Strip. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And so it gets a lot of rocket attacks and that type of thing. But what happened here was there weren't I believe that the Palestinian terrorists got through before the rockets started flying. And so when the rockets started flying, everybody heads to the safe room. They also went into various barracks of the IDF and bases and killed the IDF soldiers, stole their uniforms, put their uniforms on. They had been trained in speaking Hebrew, and then they would go through these communities, these kibbutz like Niram. Probably the worst attack was at a kibbutz called Kfar Azah, which is a little bit south of Sderot. And they would go to the door and say, we're the IDF, who were here, we're terrorist lists, we're here to help. And they would go in, and then they would, in many cases, slaughter the family. They would look, or they would go into the thing, they were shooting people on highways.
Now, keep, I heard this thing, and this really helped me understand something. And tell me what you think of that. Well, first of all, let me bring a little bit of perspective here. This happened on Shabbat, like you said, but it was also the last day of the Feast of Tabernacles, which is it's a very joyous way to end the high holidays. Rosh Hashanah, then 10 days of awe, then Yom Kippur, the most solemn day of the year, then a few days after Yom Kippur, the Feast of Sukkot, the Feast of Tabernacle, and when Jewish people build booth and eat in the booth and sleep in the booth and invite guests, and so it's a very joyous time. As a matter of fact, right after Sukkot, around that weekend, was the additional one day of Simchat Torah, the rejoicing over the Torah. So this is like the apex, the end of the high holidays, and it's a very joyous time. So
it's the end of the religious year, is it not?
No, beginning of the religious year is really you mean the religious year, because the Rosh Hashanah is the head of the civil year.
Yeah.
The beginning of the religious year is on Passover.
Okay. Well,
but
the only
anyway,
thing I know is that they rotate the reading of the Torah, and I believe the Torah portion this week is Genesis.
Right. On Simchat Torah, basically you end Deuteronomy, and then in the same momentum you start a Genesis. So there's really no break in the reading of the Torah. It's divided into weekly portions called parasha or parashot, and so they're doing that. So it's a very joyous event, and maybe this adds a little bit to the being caught off guard. It was like people were, I don't want to say people were partying, but there was this sense of happiness of coming the end of the fall feast, the high festival, the high holidays. But another thing which I heard, and that's what I want your take on this. I heard that Israel is they are used to they know what to do when they see the rockets in the sky. I mean, they do depend on Iron Dome, and Iron Dome is very, very successful almost all the time, not always, but very successful, a good success rate. But so the Israelis they know how to handle the rockets. It's no life to live. We don't understand in the West what they have to go through, but in Israel, it's part of life. But what took place was something that they were not prepared for. They were not prepared for people knocking on doors and coming in. So it was completely, people going in there in Israeli homes and going straight for the shelters to find the people in their shelters. So this was something that the Jewish people in Israel were not prepared for. So what do you have any thoughts on?
Well, yeah, I'm not so sure that the prior rocket attacks like Palestinian Islamic Jihad a year ago, and then I can't remember the year that they had the trees catch on fire on top of the Temple Mount there between the Al-Quds font near the Al-Aqsa Mosque. And so the image was, I think this was around Passover, the image was the Jews celebrating Passover in the Western Wall Plaza down below, and on top, the trees are on fire, but with the way, images work, it looked like the Al-Aqsa Mosque was on fire. And so that led to a lot of rockets. And I'm not so sure that a lot of what's been done with regard to the Gaza border and the firing of rockets was, sure, it was to keep Israel on its toe, give them problems. but it was also an intel gathering operation by the terror organizations that want to eradicate Israel. They would see, and with GPS and that type of thing, there's also, I suspect that Israel has developed these. There's the Pegasus software, and there's I can't remember the other, Paragon or something like that, that are put on phones and track people. I would not be surprised if this was not done, because it appears that they went directly and killed commanders in the area around the Gaza Strip. So there were reserves. They immediately started rushing towards the Gaza border in their vehicles. Of course, some people had to drive 4 hours to get down there. It's about 2.5 hour drive probably from Jerusalem to get down there. So they did not have the resources. In Sderot, I started to say, I believe it was there, or one of the towns, villages around there, they killed 20 police officers in the police station. And when they went in, they had mapped this out. They knew exactly where to go. They were driving their vehicles, they came in pickup trucks. They came across in ultralight hang gliders, powered hang gliders. There were some boats that were trying to get in to the south.
Yeah, this was not an intifada. This intifada is supposed to be an uprising, that kind of organic uprising of the people. This was orchestrated. This was planned. This was thought through.
The Hamas documents that I've been given access to an archive of some of these documents and a lot of the videos. And what the terrorists did was they took videos of what they were doing. In one case, I mean, this is just absolutely inhuman what happened. In one place, they went into a lady, she's a grandmother, her family just love her, she's sort of the matriarch of the family. They took her phone, they filmed themselves killing her and slaughtering her. Then they took the phone and they uploaded the video to the lady's Facebook page. And her granddaughter looked on a Facebook page and found this video of her grandmother being slaughtered.
This is what happened. It was a pogrom. It was a pogrom. It was
the rounding up of women, children. There was another case where, I mean, the stories are just legion. My friend Stan Goodenough has a thing he's put up on WhatsApp called Jerusalem Watchman, and just posting the stories of what happened. I read one this morning. There was I could get here for hours and hours about this, but there was a couple. They were in the safe room. Before they could get in the safe room, their two daughters went to a building in the kibbutz next door to a safe room. They had their 10-year-old son. The terrorists got in there, shot and killed the mother and father. They fell on top of the kid. They shot the kid in the stomach. The 10-year-old boy, he survived. He then he played dead for a couple of hours until he was sure the terrorists were gone. They went next door. They looked in the place where his sisters were. They were locked in the safe room, but they looked in there. Oh, well, nobody's living here. So they went on. So the sisters survived. The son survived, but he texted or called on the phone somebody and said, I'm injured, I'm hurt, I think I'm dying, and that type of thing. So he has survived. But I mean, the stories like this are legion. They killed, mother, father, and 3 of the really beautiful daughters. It's unbelievable. But the worst attacks were probably in Kfar Aza, in the northern part of the area of the Gaza Strip, pretty close to Gaza City. And there, the I-24 News has done a number of reports from there. The IDF, once they had secured the things, because what happens was when they kill these terrorists, they will pull a grenade as they're dying and they'll lay on the grenade. So they booby trap their own bodies. So yeah, it's very difficult to do this. They burn people alive in their safe rooms. I guess they poured gasoline in there and lit it. And the pictures are horrific, but because Kfar Aza up there, a kibbutz of about 700 people, they found 250 bodies, including 40 bodies of toddlers and babies.
Yeah.
And a number of them had been beheaded. Now, it's been very interesting. Of course, I have mentioned this on my Facebook page. I have had so-called Christians come on my Facebook page and say, oh, this is not true. This is just these evil Jews who are trying to start a world war. And these are computer generated graphics, and
So,
you're being duped.
how do you deal? Because this is something I wanted to talk about. This is a perfect segue here. How do we, as as Christians, or even people of goodwill, let's go on a broader scope. How do we respond to something like this? Because I mean, when people tell you they don't believe what they see, this is made up, this is Photoshop, this is what do we say? What do we do?
Well, so it was interesting. I think it was Tim Pool, who's got a popular podcast. He's a young guy, about 35, wears the stocking cap and everything. And he was saying, well, some of the way the news got transmitted was they had beheaded 40 babies. And I don't think that that's what the I-24 news person said. Go look at their videos. But she just said that this is what the soldiers are finding. And then they say, oh, well, the soldiers are lying. This is propaganda. And even somebody though like Tim Pool seems to be a smart guy. He says, well, they only beheaded 2 of them. But as my friend Seth Frantzman at the Jerusalem Post, one of the best Middle East defense analysts out there, he said, who cares whether they were beheaded? They killed babies and children. They slaughtered babies and children. Right. And you can see them. Even Prime Minister Netanyahu posts a picture of a dead baby on the official Twitter account. Somebody did. And of 2 bodies, I don't know if it was 2 or 3 bodies, 2 bodies in one picture and a body in the other that had been completely charred and burned. I've seen truckloads of charred bodies. I've seen truckloads of body bags. I've seen body bags of babies, tiny baby body bags.
What's interesting is scary to me is that I remember I wrote a couple articles and I spoke of that in one of my books when Eisenhower, General Eisenhower came to the camp. I think it was it was a smaller camp, it was called Ordov. He came to that camp to visit that camp. And he was with General Patton, and they look at the camp, and he wrote the letter to Marshall, General Marshall. He said, I am doing this. I'm taking the troops. I'm taking them all through the camp to look at everything. Because if we don't do this, God forbid, in 50 years from now, people will say it never happened. And at that time,
that's right. You mean this is the camps and
at the end of the war in 1945, and actually it is documented that the strong General Patton that we all know could not go through. He had to go in a corner and vomit. He could not take it, and so here we have things that are happening in real time right now because of the way the social network and the way we get our information. And as it's happening, people are already saying it's not happening. What kind of world?
That's right. And it's so apparent that it happened. And the Palestinians themselves are celebrating it. Right. They're having celebrations, and these things are happening all over the United States. I saw a video this morning of the University of Washington where they had a pro-Palestinian protest, and 2 young Jewish students are there saying to an administrator, will you please stop this? They're saying they want to kill us. This is traumatizing us. And it is traumatic for the entire country. I don't think there's anybody in Israel that is not affected by this on a personal level. They know somebody in the IDF. They know somebody was killed. They have a friend of a friend. There are 150 hostages that were taken. I think 11 of them American. There have been about 25 Americans that were killed in this attack. And so I'm not so sure that the Gerald Ford is not there to maybe special forces to mount some rescue operations of hostages. We'll just have to see how this goes.
So
I had a friend in Israel tell me, was up near Jerusalem, and said it's like the entire country has post-traumatic stress disorder today.
Yeah, I mean, we have Church People Ministries. We have like 30 staff in Israel, and a couple of them have been called back, but a lot more have their kids called back because they're older staff, and so it's very traumatic. It's not over. It's far from being over.
It's a horrible thing that's happened, Olivier. There's a lot of things going on. The situation is very fluid. And so you ask about the Christian response. I will be honest with you. I love Israel. I love the Jewish people. And when we were there the last time, we went up through the areas of what's called the West Bank, Judea, biblical Judea and Samaria. Spent some time there in 2017, got to meet a lot of Palestinians. And some of them were openly Hamas supporters, because they did not like the Palestinian Authority. They think it's corrupt. And it is. I mean, it's incredibly corrupt. But the Palestinian society, it's Arab, it's very tribal. It's more Arab. I mean, the Palestinian is a moniker that sort of came up from the
Right.
I think a propaganda operation by the what's the organization in Russia. They kind of came up with it to kind of keep everybody at odds in the Middle East, the KGB.
The KGB. In the 60s, yeah.
And so it's a very fluid situation. It's horrible what's happened. I've been personally outraged. I personally, look, I'm a Christian guy. I do help pastor a church. But, I also think of the verse in Romans 13 to be subject to the higher powers of government, because these governments are there to be a terror to the evil. And I posted on my Facebook page, I'll be honest with you, that I agreed with the Israeli government's thing to go in and eradicate.
Do they have a choice? I mean, to stop Hamas, and Hamas uses their own people as a human shield. As a matter of fact, right now, Israel just released leaflets and announcements saying we're coming in, so please get out as soon as possible. 1.1 million people, but Hamas will not let them go out. What does that tell you?
And then the border crossing into Egypt, into the Sinai, where there's plenty of room to set up tents.
It's closed.
They have closed it. And this is the problem. These people are used as pawns everywhere. They're kept in refugee camps in Syria. They're kept in refugee camps in Lebanon. And this has been going on since 1948. So we're now 75 years into this program to use these people as pawns. You can see refugee camps. If you go to Nablus up around biblical Shechem, what we call Shechem Shem, and near where Joshua's altar there is on Mount Ebal, Balak there, it's a horrible place. It's densely populated. It's a refugee camp. It's been there for 75 years. And then within a block walk of the exterior, the perimeter of this refugee camp are luxury apartments. And I'm like, and I asked a Palestinian doctor who's from Gaza. He had 3 daughters and a cousin killed in a rocket attack. It's a very famous story. He's a cancer surgeon now, lives in Toronto. And I met him at a Christ at the Checkpoint conference. He lived next. And I asked him, why does Jordan have all these refugee camps? 75% of Jordan is Palestinian. And in Jordan, I don't believe, for example, Arabs that live within Israel borders, they can vote in elections. They can do jobs. They have freedom of movement. Over in Jordan, they can't vote, is my understanding. So he said, well, the reason that's done is because of the occupation. I said, there's no occupation in Jordan. Why aren't they free there? And the problem is they have been turned into, many cases, terrorists. I mean, Jordan used to occupy what's known as the West Bank, and they gave up on it. After the 67 war, they just said, we're done with this thing because it's not governable. So now there's a lot of terrorism rising up in the West Bank area, Judea and Samaria, that's within Israel. And it's become a very difficult thing to manage. And so now Israel's facing what I think you could say is a multi-front war. There have been some incursions across the border with Lebanon. They expect some of those incursions to come from Syria as well. There have been some rocket fire. There was a hole blown in the border fence up in Lebanon. I've driven along this fence. It's very similar to the fence around Gaza. And people have come into the thing. And so when I post something about eradicating it, how can you be a Christian and even think that? and I'm sorry, I just will have to disagree on this, because sometimes evil needs to be dealt with by the governments of the world. What are they supposed to do? You don't do this, there won't be 1,300 dead Israelis. There will be 9 million in Israel, plus how many are there? 15 million in the world, 15 million Jewish people in the world.
About, yeah, between 14.5 and 15 million, with about 15 million in the entire world. Yeah.
And so over half of them now live in Israel, which is kind of a change. Used to be the biggest communities were in the United States. The
Yeah,
biggest community was the United States.
It flipped. Yeah. So, but so I hey, listen, I'm Jewish. I'm a believer in Yeshua and Jesus, and I'm looking at what Israel has to do. I mean, this is an existential crisis here. If Israel does not eradicate Hamas, it's sending a message that anybody who wants to do the same or more, they can, because Israel will not respond. And it's interesting that the other day somebody gave grief to somebody on Facebook, and I forgot who did what, but the result was they posted a statement by another Jewish believer who said, so you're telling me that Israel is supposed to not go overboard in treating in taking care of Hamas. They should respond in kind at the most. But the people that said that did not think about what they were saying, because that would mean that then Israel goes into Hamas and to Gaza, and then goes into homes and kills babies and kills young women and kills grandparents. When they said they should respond in kind, they really mean they should do nothing.
Yeah. Tom Hughes, David Tal, and I did a thing on Hope for Our Times last Sunday evening. And a lady wrote me, it's a very nice email.
By the way, I watched it. It was a good one.
And she said, well, they're going to kill children when they go into Gaza. So that you're saying that, and our soldiers have never killed children. I'm like, this is different. There are, children will be killed in a war. This is going to happen. Women will be killed in a war. But this was different, where they specifically went into homes. They went into daycare centers and specifically targeted innocent children.
One side is saying, where are the children so we can kill them? The other side is saying, where are the children so we can rescue them, so we can take care of the bad guys? That's you have one side that worships death, and the other side that values life. You cannot communicate they're on two different plans.
And I pushed pretty back hard on this lady who wrote to me, and I said, essentially something like, you really got to be kidding me, really? I mean, you think this is a conversation you want to have with me? And so I stand by the way I feel. I think there's what I prayed for last Sunday, and my update was I prayed for justice to be done. Well, and sometimes that justice is not so great. And I had this argument once with somebody on Facebook. They were talking about, well, if you were on a plane, this was after 9/11, of course, if you're on a plane and you saw Muslim terrorists trying to take over the plane, what would you do? And I actually had that about a month after 9/11. I was on a flight from Dallas to New York. I was sitting in first class because I flew a lot. And I was sitting next to a Muslim guy. And I was sort of playing out the scenario, trying to be situationally aware in my mind. I didn't know if he's going to do anything, it was, but, I said I would take him out. And immediately a lot of people jumped on me. Oh, that's just terrible, because you're denying that person a chance to hear the gospel. And I said, yeah, but I'm protecting the lives of 150 people sitting behind me on this plane that might never have heard the gospel. So it's a balance thing that you have to do. And I get the pacifistic tradition and everything, and I grew up in a tradition like that, an evangelical tradition, but I'm just not, I've wrestled with it. My father wrestled with it. He wrote his seminary Master of Divinity paper on that issue, whether Christians had to be non-combatants or combatants. So I think it's an individual conscious choice. But listen, we have a massive problem here. This is not going to go away. And look at what happened with Israel, which has a pretty secure border that got broke through, and compare it to what's going on in the United States, where they've they've essentially taken down the border.
Right.
And we know that people that are inclined, like these people of Hamas are inclined, have gotten across that border. And I think everybody, when you're in cities and that type of thing, you need to be situationally aware, watch what's going on around you. And what happened in Israel, again, this was a masterful, deceptive operation. They knew that people would be in their safe rooms. They went to specific communities. They had maps. And of course, there's GPS now, there's satellite of everything. And so they knew exactly where they were going to go. They drove direct.
They did. So John,
anyway.
we need to wrap this up, but I wanted to finish with this idea, this concept here. This is good. This war is going to take a few days, a few weeks, a few months. We don't know, but it's not over. It's not one of those, find the terrorists and then eliminate and we're done. They've got to put an end to Hamas. So it's going to be going on for a while. In the meantime, we're seeing the entire world, not everybody everywhere, but over the entire planet, we're seeing massive support for Hamas, which is, it's mind-boggling.
A lot of the governments in the West have given lip service support. Oh, this was terrible, what happened? But immediately they come out and they back off of that and they start saying, well, what your response needs to be proportional. You can't be too cruel. Vladimir Putin came out this morning through the Russian government and said Israel cannot go in. A death toll in a major operation, a high death toll in a major operation in Gaza is unacceptable. Vladimir Putin, 500,000 dead Ukrainians. Vladimir Putin has the audacity, when it's the Jewish state of Israel going in, all of a sudden now he gets morality.
So the reason why I'm saying this is so we're seeing things like this, and I've been documenting the rise of anti-Semitism. You've known me for a few years now, and I fear for my people because right now, and I'm thinking about, I'm in America. I'm not in Israel. I'm not in France anymore. So I'm in the U.S. We have 7 million Jews in the U.S. Give or take a few 100,000, and we are. I feel that right now we are at a place where we're past the let's pray for the peace of Jerusalem response from Christians. The prayer is very important. No, don't quote me wrong here. Prayer is foundational for everything we do as believers, absolutely. But we're at a place now where Christians need to think hard. I was doing a show with Tom Hughes yesterday, and this is something I just want to share with you and get your opinion on this. We're at a place now where Christians need to think, okay, what am I going to do to reach out and help my Jewish neighbor, my Jewish friend, my Jewish coworker, my Jewish family member, whoever it is, whatever the case is, beyond the praying for the peace of Jerusalem? Am I going to open my home? Am I going to, I'm taken to that scripture in Matthew 5:31 through 46, the parable of sheep and goats. Yeah. And this is obviously Gentiles getting saved during the tribulation. We're going to go out of their way to reach out and help the Jewish people. It's a beautiful story. And then Yeshua comes back at the end of the tribulation. And he says, hey, what you did for them, you did for me. When you helped them, when you fed them, when you gave them water, when you clothed them, when you visited them in prison, you did it for me. And the people don't understand it in the story. They go like, well, where were you? He said, well, you, to the extent that you did for the least of them, you did it for me. So we are right now. I see this. What I like to call these people is based on the righteous among the nations after the war that Yad Vashem started this recognition of heroes that went to save Jewish people during the war. I call these people during the tribulation the new righteous among the nations, and I'm thinking forget where we stand on the rapture, the tribulation. We can be pre, post, mid, three-quarter. I don't care. All I know is that I'm looking at what's going to happen during the tribulation with these Gentiles going out because they got saved and they understand the place of Israel and the importance of the Jewish people to help the Jews. Why can't we take that principle and apply it today so that Christians can say, okay, what can I do tangibly to help my Jewish friends? I think we are at that crossroads right now. What do you think?
100% agree. In fact, if the biblical model of what happens at the end, and so we live at this time where I don't think there's any question that we're in the end times now. And so then the question is, so we take the principle of how this all wraps up and what happens in the wrap up, which is the sheep and goats, which has a very specific judgment aspect and principle about how people alive at that time are supposed to act. So when you take that principle as why should we not, when we live, I was texting with Tom Hughes the other day, and he was doing a show with somebody, and I called it living in biblical times. And I think we live in biblical times. So why should we not do that now? Listen, this is going to be, I mean, we argue about all the little fine points of eschatology, and we all have our little charts and that type of thing. And we go to conferences and we argue about it, and we kind of joke about it too. I think it's time. I mean, I don't mind all that. Okay. I think, but my heart right now is we need to kind of set that aside. And we live in biblical times, and we need to understand that one of the most important parts of this apocalypsis, this revealing thing that's going to take place, is how we live and what we do, in particular with regard to Israel and the Jewish people. This is critical, and I think it's going to be, at least based on my Facebook feed. I had to block and unfriend a few people this week because I started digging into the stuff, and it was some of the worst anti-Semitic tropes that I've ever seen. Like, well, the Jews, they want to cause all the worlds in the world. They did this on purpose to themselves, this is like the medieval anti-Semitic trope that you've written about. And it bothers me, but those of you who are listening here, you need to understand that within the church, the body of Christ, this is going to be maybe one of the most, if not the most, divisive issues from here till the Lord's return.
Absolutely. I don't think a lot of people are seeing it this way. I think that Tom gets that. You get that. I agree with you. I think Brendan also gets that.
Right.
Brendan Holt.
Yeah, I was texting with Brandon Holthouse the other day.
Yeah.
And listen, remember that God is jealous for Zion. This is sort of the hub of the end times wheel that's coming upon us.
Yeah.
This whole thing, and this thing with Jerusalem, and understanding what happened, and the archaeological discoveries, and then how do we use this to stand as a witness for Jewish people? That's also on my heart. And it's not easy. I've been there. They make fun of Jesus and all that stuff, and they castigate us. But this is a point where we need to support them, because this is going to get very bad. So when this operation in Gaza begins in the next day, few days, whatever, and maybe wars in the north, where this could be World War. I mean, this is
Oh, it could turn very quickly.
Oh yeah. And so the world, when they go in and start, they will level Gaza. And then they will start to tear apart the terror tunnels, and they'll say, okay, we're gonna have to rebuild Gaza for people to live in. But until then, we've got to eradicate the infrastructure they have like an underground cities built there. The world is going to turn against Israel in a way like you've never seen before. And so while
and this is not even the tribulation yet.
That's right. It's coming, and it's sort of like we're not in the tribulation yet, but if you look, you can kind of see and hear it and smell it. I just think that's it's like
the old Western movies when you put your ear on the railroad, you see the train is coming not too far.
Yeah, and I think it's a time, but the things that are going to be happening then, they don't completely develop overnight. And I think that this is, we can argue about Psalm 83, Ezekiel 38, and Isaiah 17, and all that stuff. I think, we need to be, I don't know that that's necessary. My heart right now is not about whether this is that particular passage of scripture. My heart is, what are we going to do with the Jewish people in Israel? That's what I'm thinking about.
And you know what, I'm with you 100%, because I don't want to speculate on the biblical timing of Gog and Magog. I mean, we've had fun with this for a long time in the prophecy conference circles that you and I
right.
that we do those conferences, and this is fun. We can still do it, but right now, you said it, I agree with you. Right now, I think not the only, but the best opportunity we have to show the Jewish people what it means to be a caring Christian who has a relationship with the God of the universe through the shed blood of Yeshua, is to show the love and in a tangible way. I mean, I think it was Andy Woods who said, sometimes you are the only Bible people will read. So it's another way of saying what St. Francis of Assisi, not a big fan of his, but I like that quote, when he said, preach the gospel every day, if necessary, use words. Right. That's what we are right now. If we open our homes and our hearts to our Jewish friends and say, hey, whatever it takes, I got your back, but not just on Sunday morning at church or at a prayer vigil. I got your back if you can't go home, if your account is frozen, if they took your car, if you lost your job. I'll be there for you. I will. You can count on me. The Christians missed that opportunity in a big way 80 years ago.
That's right. Well,
my father was taken
and stood aside.
Right.
And listen, find there are people in Israel that are, I mean, the pictures, the stories, the families destroyed. There was one couple killed, and then 16 hours later, they came back, to clear the area, and they went into the safe room and found their 14-month-old twins alive. Now these children have no parents. Whole families have been wiped out,
and we're going to get a lot more of those stories. So that's where that's where people are going to have to.
So I guess those families are hurting, and they need help and financial help. So find charities. I don't know if you have anything set up with Chosen People yet.
Yeah, we do, and I'll put that in the. We do have a way that you can donate for the needs of what's going on right now in Israel. We have 30 people on staff, and they have been very busy. And people have been getting a lot of emails. They will say, "Well, how can we help?"
It might even be, Olivier, clothing. I mean, somebody told me they were driving up in the Jordan Valley area, and they saw these massive makeshift parking lots of vehicles, and they're like, they called up every reserve possible to be called up. 350,000 by last count,
with no time to pack anything or
no. Yeah. They don't have clothes. They don't need this. I know there's some other people, ministries up in the Golan. I think FAI Mission is helping with soldiers and that type of thing up there, getting them clothes, food.
So the immediate need is for what's happening in Israel, but on the longer run, I don't want people to miss when I was talking about this, is that I think that we need to be prepared in America to rescue and protect our Jewish friends, because
maybe one thing you can do is go to a local synagogue and say, how can I help? Because I think there's going to be a problem.
That's exactly what I'm telling Christians to do. Call the synagogue. Right. I, as a Messianic Jew, I'm not always welcome to do that. I went to a prayer vigil last night in where I live in the suburb of Dallas, and there was a rabbi that I have met before. I had coffee with him because I wanted to talk to him about the danger of anti-Semitism. And when I first reached out to him, I said, listen, I'm a Messianic Jew. I believe that Jesus is the Messiah. You don't believe the same, but when it comes to the anti-Semites, we are both Jewish, so we need to work together to fight that monster. And he agreed. He said, let's meet, let's talk. So I have some access, but Christians like you, John, like Tom, like Brendan, you have a tremendous influence. You know, a lot of people in a Jewish world, and that's where you can also come in the picture. And I'm not trying to put you on the spot on my show here, but I already know your heart. I already know your heart. So
Right.
I know I'm not pushing you to do something that you wouldn't want to do. To talk to the Jewish leaders and said, listen, if trouble comes, I know people. We've got, you know, we can help you. So
If you need a place to meet, it's open on Shabbat. Maybe you could use our place.
yeah,
You know, I mean,
right, or a place to if they need a place for rescue. Some people will take them in their homes too.
right.
That's what I'm saying.
There's plenty of opportunities. The people in Israel, but I think Jewish communities and places here are going to need help as well. And so
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I mean, this is not something we've ever dealt with before, and I don't think that this changes till the Lord returns. I think that's the
No, it's
overarching.
but it doesn't change, but it just kicked up a notch, and
Right.
I think the world is going to really, I think the world is really going to start seeing what we mean when we say that anti-Semitism is on the rise. Anti-Semitism has got, this is it, you know, like the last article I wrote on my blog, you know, is, you know, a couple of days ago, is global anti-Semitism has officially reached the point of no return. So we're at that place now. And anyway, well, listen, John, you and I could talk for another 2 or 3 hours, but
We could.
you know,
I thank
we
you
gotta
so
be,
much for inviting me on. So
we got to be respectful of the audience and let them take a bathroom break or whatever. So,
well, they can also go to the YouTube on YouTube in the little settings thing. You can knock it up to like 2.5 times the speed. So if you think we talk too slow, and it was something like Donald Duck, maybe. But
no. But anyway, I mean, they
thank
can
you,
pause.
Olivier.
They can pause too. But John, thank you. You're a good friend. But you and I don't talk very often. But
Not often enough. Yeah.
we connected through our dear friend who's with the Lord now, Steve
Steve.
Mitchell, and can't wait to see him again. He was such a dear brother. He's such a dear brother. So again, thank you for coming. We might do another show in the near future because
Let's be sure that we do that. And I really enjoyed it. And people, the first time we went to Israel in 1995, there was a big sign over the Jewish quarter. When you stood at the Western Wall and you looked up, a big yellow sign that said, and I'm not a Hebrew speaker, Akuna Labiat HaMashiach, prepare for the coming of Messiah. The Lubavitchers have put that up there, but I think
that was Schneerson, yeah,
it was Schneerson's group. He had passed away a few years before, but
94, yeah.
this is the time to prepare for the coming of Messiah. We're at that time, I think.
I agree.
Okay. Thank you, Olivier.
John, thank you for coming. We'll be in touch again. God bless you, and I can't wait to see you at your church. So
Okay, thank you.